'cause you threw away the motel key.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, we are smack dab in the middle of Michigan week.
We are. It's almost that time. I had a fun exchange with the mom of one of my daughter's friends this week, where she goes, "I can't believe the kids have school only 2 days this week." And I frowned and cocked my head like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Thanksgiving." I was like, "Oh right, Thanksgiving. Sorry, this is Michigan week for me. I forgot. Right. I forgot there's a major national holiday this week.
Why are they sending kids should not be going to school during Michigan week? Although, Tom, I think I may have mentioned this in the past. There may have been a couple of years in college where I did not go to any classes during Michigan week.
That seems very irresponsible, and I certainly cannot relate to any of that.
Yeah, but don't tell anybody.
I won't. No one's listening, I'm sure. You're not recording it, right? It should be fine.
Actually, let me make sure I am recording. Yes. Okay, we can continue with the show.
Good. Off to a great start.
This show is one we did last year that I think turned out really well. Is I asked some Michigan fans who follow me on Twitter what their concerns are for this game. And if you'll remember last year, Michigan was a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So there were still concerns.
The concerns were mostly, what if the champagne's not cold enough in my refrigerator?
Exactly. What happens if I get some in my eye? What do I do? And this year, however, concerns are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the concerns rhyme with Mace Blung Cheshang.
Oh.
Defensive end.
Who?
He's pretty good.
Mace Blung.
Mace
yes,
Blung.
Yes, okay.
He missed a couple games.
Schmeisman Trophy favorite, yes.
Schmoes. All right, so then we had a bunch of Twitter reactions, and so we're going to go over those and just, yes, this is a legit concern. Talk about the concern. Say, you are absolutely right to be concerned about Mace Blung.
Yeah. Number one, from @tgoose74. I'll approach it from a conspiracy theorist view. Always the best way. Go on, yes. For Michigan to win, they must do it decidedly. OSU is Big Ten's only shot at making the college football playoff. Any close calls will favor Ohio State to ensure Big Ten makes playoff. Michigan must not let it be a close game and be able to be influenced by the officials.
This is incorrect, Tom, and it should not be a concern because, as we know, Ohio State probably doesn't need to win this game to make the playoffs.
That's true.
They just need to win the Big Ten championship game after this game and don't get blown out in this game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a pretty good chance Ohio State actually makes the playoff, even if, they lose by 3-7 points this week and they win the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State's probably still in. I mean, if the conversation around LSU is that LSU is in, even if they lose the SEC championship game, Ohio State is in. Even if they lose this game,
there's no difference there, and
certainly.
it's because other teams keep losing, and so maybe this is the least important Michigan game of all time.
I will also go back to something I wrote a year ago, where when you go back to, I think it was 1999, I believe Ohio State has been called for more penalties in the Michigan-Ohio State game than Michigan in all but 2 years from, in a 20-year span from 1999 to 2018. So, and the most lopsided one was in 1999 when, Ohio State was, 6-5 and completely out of everything, and Michigan needed a win to, stay near the top of the polls, and Michigan, was called for 7 yards of penalties in Ohio State. It was called for 115.
Oh, really?
And there have been no controversial officiating calls in the series since then. So really, right. Ohio State's due for a game where they get all the calls.
I had somebody ask me on Twitter, like, "Hey, can you send me that piece that you guys wrote? Somebody wrote about the penalties." I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but I'll Google it." And it's like I read it again. I'm like, "Oh yes." And then I was like, "It is a good thing that there have been no controversies since, and everything has run really smoothly and well." Quality has been outstanding.
Next one from @TheBismarck, whose Twitter name this week is Just Beat Ohio State. So I think it might be a Michigan fan. Is this offensive resurgence more about learning speed and space, or simply getting back to things they did well last year and natural growth of players' skill sets?
Yes. It seems like it's all of that, right?
It's probably all of that, and also
a little bit in the last show where they're not going no huddle, but they are getting the receivers more involved. And I think they know what they can and can't do. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to make the best of what they can. So I could see it being a bit of all of this, and also something you failed to mention.
They played some lousy defenses
Thank
the
you,
last couple
Tom.
of weeks. Yeah,
Ding, ding.
When you play bad pass defenses, that can also help your pass offense.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's a thing that can happen.
Is that? Do you think? Let me ask. Do you think that happens in the Big 12?
I mean, I'm going to need some kind of an example. Can you think of one Big 12 team of any consequence that has had a substandard defense the last few years?
The only reason I bring that up is because they throw the ball so well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but that's against good defense, which is the Big 12 defenses, right?
I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, can you think of any examples from the say the Southeastern Conference this year, perhaps? I mean,
is LSU's defense? They have to be good. I assume they're good. Don't worry about that.
Yeah,
they're good.
They're number one in the country. How bad can they be?
They have Joe Burrow.
Yeah, exactly.
And he plays quarterback?
Yes. Is that on defense? I don't know a lot about football.
Next question.
Next one from @PWestRR, Patrick West. I don't see how they will be able to handle the diverse run game of Ohio State, same versus the pass game. Pass protection has been a strength. This is a different animal. Shea already has a tendency to bail in pockets that are clean.
I think this is all very, very correct.
Yeah,
these are good concerns to have.
Yeah, these are legitimate concerns because Michigan has a pretty decent defense this year. They're not lights out like they were last year, but Michigan's defense is good enough that they can, if you're one-dimensional, they can jump on you. Ohio State is not one-dimensional. That's going to create some problems. And, you know, we'll get to the defensive tackles with a question later, but put a pin in that one. But yeah, there's on the other side of the ball, pass protection. The pass protection has been pretty good from the interior of the line. Those tackle spots, Mayfield and to a lesser extent Runyon, I don't think that's a winning matchup for Michigan.
Well, and the diverse run game of OSU is something that has given them problems for the last decade, aside from last year when it wasn't a diverse running game, yet Ohio State still rushed for like 170 yards on them.
But everything else went great for Michigan last year.
In fact, it did not.
Really?
No. There were some passing yards in that game as well. And pass protection for Michigan has been fine. But yes, Chase Young and the rest of the Ohio State defensive line is a different animal. It's a scarier animal. It's a faster animal, has more teeth. It's not a herbivore. It is a carnivore animal. Some animals are cute. This is not a cute animal. This is a scary animal.
Mm-hmm. So it's like a pug?
Oh, come on, man. I used to have a pug. Pugs are adorable. Oh, Tom.
Next one from @1GoBlue1. Stopping Dobbins. Fields running from empty set on draw plays. I mean, that second part was really not much of a concern for anyone until last week when all of a sudden it was like, that's going to be a problem.
It was like, you just imagine Don Brown watching tape and be like, there's like a red button, emergency button you hit, and it's like all hands on deck. Of course, James Franklin said after the game, Justin Fields' legs were the difference maker. And he only rushed for, after sacks, like 60-some yards, fumbled twice, and yet it was still like Justin Fields won the game. He was the thing that we could not account for. And Ohio State has more of those than Michigan. Mm-hmm. You can't account for Chase Young. You can't account for Justin Fields after the play breaks down or on the QB runs. Or Tom, he also throws a heck of a ball.
Does he now?
He does, in fact.
That seems bad. So when they call him a dual threat quarterback, that means he's a threat in two ways? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, that means if you smack him with a glove, he will kick your butt.
A dual threat.
Right,
yes. Is Aaron Burr on the Michigan defense this
year?
No. No, okay.
Are you thinking of a two-threat quarterback? A quarterback who can run and pass?
Yes.
That's a two-threat.
A two-threat.
A two-tool player.
Okay. Yes.
You're mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think the biggest problem for Michigan is, like, okay, if they want to sell out to stop J.K. Dobbins, they can stop J.K. Dobbins. They can, if they really want to sell out to stop the Ohio State run game, they could do that. But then you've got Chris Olave, then you've got KJ Hill, then you've got Ben Victor, then you've got Austin Mack.
That's the problem with Ohio State's offense, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's why Urban Meyer hated facing dual threat quarterbacks, which is why he wanted them.
Yeah.
Because they're a pain. You'd much rather face somebody who will just stand back there and throw it or hand it off. When you have to factor in Justin Fields running the ball, it changes everything you do on defense. It makes that blitz more dangerous. Jeff Hafley, everything they do is to limit big plays, the explosive plays. When you've got Justin Fields and you're trying to attack him, if one guy misses and one guy loses contain, who knows what's going on deep down the field, Tom? I know we do our over-unders on our second Patreon bonus show during the season. Over-under Chris Olave, 1.5 touchdowns.
Under.
Wow, Tom.
Under.
I'm disappointed.
I'm going to say, yeah, I'll say he gets 1 on Saturday. Here's an interesting question. If Justin Fields has 20 rushes this weekend against Michigan, who does that favor? If all you know is the number of rushes.
I kind of feel like that favors Michigan.
That's where I am, yeah.
It's a more conservative approach. Because here's the other hand. If he has 5 carries, it's a blowout. Like, he's just slinging the ball all over the place. He's not getting touched because there's no sacks. They're totally not concerned. It's when they wouldn't run JT Barrett because they're playing nobodies. And if they're not running Justin Fields, it's because they're playing nobody on defense and they're just boom, 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 scoring quickly, and there's no need to run the ball with him.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that you didn't mention there is if you've got guys covered downfield, if Michigan is doing like a drop 7, drop 8 kind of defense and just trying to get to him with 3 or 4 guys, and guys are covered, and he has to go out and run, and he's, running 20 times, but he's, getting 5 yards per carry a lot, that's not good for Ohio State.
No.
Ohio State has to be able to either move the ball on the ground with J.K. Dobbins or be able to throw it. Either one of those, and they probably win. If there's a bunch of, Justin Fields scrambles that are not called runs, and he's picking up 5 yards on a bunch of those, 3-5 yards, that's something that you could see Ohio State's offense kind of bog down if the receivers aren't able to get open downfield and he isn't able to do something significant with his legs.
Yeah, I think the more carries, and not that 20 carries would lose it or anything, but yeah, it would be better for Michigan. It's crazy to say. The more carries for the guy who's 6'2", 230 pounds, who runs a 4.4, the more carries for that guy, the better for Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, there aren't great options here for Michigan.
That's true.
Having sat and watched every snap of Ohio State football this season, I have not felt like the opposing team has had a lot of great options all year. So that's there are no great options. There are less bad options potentially.
And it would be JT Barrett and the running back on the zone read, and you have the defense pick okay, let's let Barrett have the ball. Mm-hmm. He's only going to go so far.
Right.
Justin Fields has the ability to go further. But as you said, if Michigan is playing more zone, they've got their eyes on the quarterback.
Yep.
That's going to limit some of those big plays. But they're not always going to be in zone.
Right.
And there will be times where maybe that's the one time. Maybe they hit it exactly right, Ohio State does, and there goes Justin Fields for 50 yards for a touchdown.
Or you've got trips to one side of the field, and so all the defensive backs are on one side of the field, and you've got an open side.
They do run a whole lot of trips.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we've talked about this at some point before, but just in case people don't understand the relation of zone and man defense to, quarterback run. If you're in a man defense, you're turning and running with the receiver, so you're looking at the receiver, going downfield away from the quarterback. If you're in a zone, you're kind of, you have an area on the field, so you're mostly facing towards the line of scrimmage. You kind of have eyes on the quarterback, so you see, you see those, when the quarterback starts running, you kind of can see that and you can react to it quickly. If you're in man, think back to the 2004 game when you had Troy Smith squirting out of the pocket and then just running down the field, and it was it Lamar Woodley? I mean, one of the Michigan defensive ends was running behind him and pointing at him hey, there goes that guy. He's got the football, quick. And, there was no reaction from Michigan players. And so Smith took off for a 40-yard run. I mean, that's what running against a, man defense can look like.
And then you also can spread them out with the 5 wide like Ohio State did against Penn State. And if you've got 1 or 2 linebackers who are the only people in the line of vision because everybody else is spread out and Josh Myers happens to be out there to block, and you either have to make one guy miss or no guys miss, now you've got another issue.
Next one from @TX Mulready. Obviously, Chase Young and Shea's ability to leave the pocket and find his wide receivers. Defensively, I'm scared we're going to allow you guys to go down and score on the first drive and not be able to bounce back.
Yeah, and I mentioned that a couple shows ago where the fear from Michigan fans, or in this particular fan, of just that first drive setting the tone and being like, well, like it's the meme. Oh, here we go again.
Yep.
And you can totally understand that. But it's just the first drive.
Mm-hmm.
You can overcome anything that happens in that first quarter, provided it's not a 28-0, something like that. It's a long game, but setting that tone with that first drive is such a huge thing. For one, it takes the edge off of Ohio State.
Yep.
Now you've got a little bit of the pressure has been lessened, and now Michigan has to react to that, but maybe Michigan comes down and scores on that first drive with their script.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, oh, here we go. But Michigan has led this game many, many times in the first quarter over the last 15, 18 years and won it very, very few times.
Yeah, I mean, some people may not remember this game, but 2017, Michigan had a lead in the second half and lost.
Oh, yeah?
2016, Michigan had a lead in double overtime, and Ohio State picked up a 4th and 1, which play not many people recall, but picked up a 4th and 1.
Yeah, it's interesting how plays like that people, you forget how important they were just because it's just, it's 1 yard, nobody cares. Mm-hmm. But you look back on it and you're like, yeah, probably more important than people thought at the time.
Yeah, in retrospect, JT Barrett picking up that first down had some consequence. Yes. Yeah.
And in terms of Shea Patterson leaving the pocket, the fundamentals go out, but he's not Patrick Mahomes like, but he likes to think he is like Patrick Mahomes at times, but his arm isn't quite strong enough. He hears footsteps. I think he gets a little bit nervous inside the pocket, so maybe he leaves before it's time, but maybe leaving before it's time is not a bad idea this week, but then you still have, you can counter that as well. I don't think Ohio State's pass rush is the script for him to have a great day.
No, I mean, if he's leaving before it's time this weekend, that's one read and go. Because it may be time when he's on his second read if Ohio State is getting to the quarterback the way they have throughout the year. And what may help him there is if the middle of the line's holding up, you don't have someone right in your face. Maybe that makes it a little easier to hang in there. But if you've got Chase Young coming off your blind side and he's gotten you a couple times, then you do hear those footsteps. You do start seeing those ghosts, and then that can speed up a clock that already is not going.
But he's a senior quarterback, so he has to be willing to take a beating.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to be the leader.
He has to be willing to stand in there. If he gets happy feet, if Shea Patterson has 20 rushes this week, Michigan's losing by a whole lot. Like there's a way that Justin Fields runs a whole bunch and Ohio State wins. If Shea Patterson has 15, 20 carries this week, that is an extremely bad thing for Michigan. Next one from @Gavrilo_S. Can the Michigan offense score enough to win?
I believe they can because Ohio State scored 28 points last week. So there is a scenario where Michigan can score 29. They can score 30, 31. That's about maybe 34. In theory, Ohio State has not given up points like that. You start to get up there and you're like, well, maybe a pick six has to be in there. There's some unfortunate turnovers, but that's the Michigan defense. But Michigan offense can certainly score enough to win because the Ohio State offense only scored 28 points last week. Yeah,
they can. I don't know if I see Michigan's offense putting up 30 points this weekend.
No, they would need help.
But you need a punt return, a kick return, INT return, something. But Michigan's offense could score 21. Michigan's offense could score 24. That's all within the realm of possibility. And then you just need Giles Jackson to return a kick. I mean, that's, and he came close last week. And Ohio State has been, I think, overly stubborn about not just kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone. This seems like a weekend that the 10 yards of field position you're potentially gaining on Michigan, or 5 yards of field position if you have good coverage, is not worth the risk of Michigan running a kickoff back. Like, kick the ball through the back of the end zone and let them start on the 25 and say, okay, go ahead and go 75 yards on our defense. And they have very consistently not done that. And 2 years ago against Penn State, it bit them. And it has not really bitten them this year, but
they've given up a couple long-ish returns in the last couple of weeks.
Hamler had one to the 40 or 45 last week.
They started at the 40 last weekend, and the Maryland game, Javon Leake had like a 70-yarder.
I mean, they kicked the ball off about 15 times that game, so you're gonna give up one at that point.
But just specifically, the question: can the Michigan O score enough to win? I don't know that's. As I think about it, and it's not just can Michigan score enough to win, it's can the Michigan offense score enough to win?
It depends on how the Michigan defense plays, is the answer to that question.
How many 11-yard touchdown drives can you have?
Well, and it feels like the Michigan offense is probably capped at about 24 points.
Yeah, I think so.
That doesn't mean Michigan is capped at 24 points. Run back a punt. There have been punt returns for touchdowns in this series, as longtime Ohio State fans may recall. It's possible, but they would have to, for Michigan to get to 24, that maybe the defense scores one and the defense plays a pretty good game and holds Ohio State to 24, 28 points. Then they can win.
You get that plan to win. Then we talk about punting. Will Hart has not, with his touchbacks, has been an issue. Drew Chrisman has not been great the last half of the season. Mm-hmm. This game could come down to which of those guys puts more punts inside the 10. Than the touchbacks. And when you're talking about a Michigan offense that needs as much help from its defense and its special teams as you can get, pinning Ohio State at the 5 is a lot different than letting them loose with a touchback at the 20. And it might change what Ryan Day does as a play caller. You start him at the 20, that's just normal.
Right.
You start him at the 4 and 5, now you're thinking a little bit, and help the Michigan defense help you, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you have this vision in your head of Ohio State starts at their own 4, and Ryan Day is willing to let Justin Fields drop back and heave one downfield to Chris Olave or something, like take a shot when Michigan isn't expecting it. But you have to trust your tackles to hold up. You have to trust your offensive line to hold up and keep those blockers at bay. We saw Justin Fields get strip sacked for a safety against Miami in that situation. And, that is against Miami. It's like, well, now it's 5-0 and everyone's kind of chuckling because they have 5 points. Right. It isn't that cute. Against Michigan, okay, then you've given up 2 points. You've also given the ball up. That's potentially a game changer in a game when you can't afford that.
Yep.
Next one. From at Long Drive Larms. Don't forget a weather commentary. Looks dicey. Yeah, I mean the last time I looked at the weather, it was still kind of in that high 30s, 40 degree. Maybe it's going to rain, maybe it's not. Still kind of a little up in the air, and that'll it's generally not worth looking at an hour by hour weather forecast until like a day before. So you have my permission to go ahead and look at that on Friday. It doesn't look like it's going to be 6 inches of snow or 40-mile-an-hour winds. So
just
probably
assume there's going to be some chill in the air and not ideal conditions.
So it's going to be cloudy and gray and kind of chilly. So it's going to be an Ohio State-Michigan game.
Right. It may or may not rain.
Yeah.
Chance of that.
Yes. Next one from at Hops Law. Defense. Concerns on defense. Number 1, Fields converting third down with his legs. Number 2, the defensive tackles holding up inside. Offense. Number 1, blocking Chase Young. Number 2, blocking Chase Young. Number 13, will the run game be able to do anything? Let me answer your offensive concerns first. Yes, that is a legitimate concern. Mm-hmm. Number 2, yes, that is an extremely legitimate concern. Number 13, if the run game is able to do anything more than pick up 3 yards, if the median carry for Michigan is longer than 3 yards, that's probably a win. But I don't know if the median carry for Michigan is going to be longer than 3 yards.
I'm thinking something like 34 for 110 is maybe what they could hope for.
Yeah.
It's if they would need some like a 40-yarder to get into the 160s or something like that.
Yeah, it's 34 for 110 seems that's probably not too far off. And and then
but
I
could also see 70 yards. They could really shut them down, but that doesn't always happen where some bad running games for Michigan, they get a hit here or there to bolster their numbers a little bit. And I think maybe they get that here. But I don't see the Michigan running game as being what gets it done. But it has to. There has to be some of it.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be totally one-dimensional, so they're going to have to try and run the ball, and that's where those 34 carries come from.
Yeah.
You know, I don't expect Michigan to do a ton on the ground, but they kind of have to stick with it at least a little bit. They just have to avoid the first down run, second down run, third down. Okay, now it's passing time. And they have done a pretty good job not falling into that pattern this year. But, you know, when the chips are down and it's an Ohio State game, is Jim Harbaugh going to, revert to Jim Harbaugh man ball mode? I mean, probably not. If the Josh Gaddis speed and space thing is not working, does it revert to man ball at that point? Maybe. And, if you start seeing Michigan go run, pass, that is an extremely bad thing for Michigan, because that leads to a lot of 3rd and 6s and a lot of, that transitions smoothly into your concerns about Chase Young, because when it's 3rd and 6, Chase Young's a problem.
Yeah, and that running game, it's not just running the ball, it's the RPOs as well. You got to factor those in, and it's the screens out wide. These all count by the coaches as rush yards. But if you can't get something between the hash marks, it's not a great sign. It's not a great indication of your chances to win. If
you can't R, that takes the PO off the field.
And it really just POs the fans in the stadium.
Did you write that one down? Was that one you'd workshopped before we hit record?
I'm just reading the script.
Okay. Next one from @BrianJohn. Would want to limit the Ohio State run game, but tough considering Dobbins fields and edge quasi-runs like wide receiver screens, swing passes. Also, can Michigan establish their own run game, including quarterback and quasi-edge runs?
Yeah, that's where some of that speed and space is just swinging the pass out to Donovan Peoples-Jones or Ronnie Bell and trying to get that Nico Collins blocking out there, or maybe even having a tight end out there blocking, where you stretch Ohio State east and west, north and south. Maybe you won't be able to stretch them north and south with the running game, but with those wide passes and the RPOs beyond the linebackers, there are different ways. But again, when you're comparing Ohio State's ability to do that to Michigan's ability, Ohio State can do it better, and Michigan's concerns should be higher than Ohio State's concerns.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Next one, @Friedman_Scott. Defensive tackles. And can Michigan take advantage of the non-Okuda cornerbacks?
He wrote down DT's defensive tackles 4 times. Actually more than defensive tackles that Michigan actually has.
Yeah. That's the concern with Michigan's defensive tackles. We talked about this on our show yesterday. They've played better than I think we expected this year. They have
since Wisconsin.
Since Wisconsin, yes. I think that we came into the year expecting utter disaster there, but that's predicated on sometimes guys get hurt and there's no one behind the two starters there. Carlo Kemp and Mike Dwumfor, and then it's Kemp and Dwumfor and pray for what rhymes with Dwumfor? Rain for. They have had, because they have stayed healthy, that has been less of a disaster than I think we both anticipated. But if Ohio State's run the ball 40 times in the fourth quarter of that game, those defensive tackles are going to be gassed. Yeah. There's not a second, they can't roll lines like Ohio State can on the defensive line where you keep those guys fresh. They wear down eventually. And that's when you have Dobbins busting a 50-yarder, or Master Teague come in with fresh legs, busting a 60-yarder for a game-clinching touchdown in the fourth quarter. That's, I think, where the concern is. If they keep the top 2 guys in there and they can get Ohio State off the field and not get gassed in the second half, maybe. But yeah, that certainly has to be a concern.
We've got to that point where the game is almost here and things get so much larger. Things are larger, and then you remember, 4 months ago when we were talking about this game, it was the defensive line can't hold up. What has changed?
Yeah.
Now that we're here, we can't forget that aspect of it where they don't have a lot of depth there. Ohio State will pound and pound, as Ryan Day says, keep swinging. And by that fourth quarter, you got to think these guys who, having dealt with no huddle for all game long. Eventually that rock will break, and that maybe that's another reason why Jim Harbaugh has slowed things down.
Yeah.
To rest those guys.
Yeah, and for on the Ohio State side, I think the concern with the offensive line is in the pass protection. I mean, the pass pro has just consistently not been great for Ohio State. In the run game, they've been pretty consistently good all year. That should be, I think, in terms of line play, that's the concern for Michigan, is if Ohio State can run the ball, keep pounding it, wear them down. That's where the concern is. As far as the non-Jeff Okudah cornerbacks, I mean, Shaun Wade is projected as a first-round NFL draft pick. Damon Arnett has been very consistently good this year. I mean, you've seen pretty darn good coaching from Jeff Hafley. I mean, a lot of the concerns that people had in terms of technique from the corners and that kind of stuff last year has not been a concern this year. You have not seen teams be able to take the top off this defense with Jordan Fuller back there. You know, I think it's perfectly reasonable for Michigan fans to expect, you know, Nico Collins is going to get his. He's going to get one or two. You're going to hit one or two downfield. You'll have some success in the passing game. The problem that they're going to have is if you're throwing those like swing passes, the tackling from Ohio State this year has been good enough that, you know, you throw that 6-yard pass. That 6-yard pass is probably not going to turn into a 50-yard pass. That 6-yard pass is going to turn into an 8-yard pass or a 9-yard pass or a 10-yard pass. Okay, then you got to do it again. Then you got to do it again. Then you got to do it again. Because Ohio State's defense has been focused solely this year on limiting those big plays, keeping the opponent from taking the top off that defense. They've done a very good job of that consistently throughout the year. If Michigan can't run the ball and Michigan can't hit big plays in the passing game and they have to kind of dink and dunk and work their way down the field, can Shea Patterson do that consistently enough to get all the way down the field? Yeah, I don't know if I would feel great about that if I was a Michigan
Shaun
fan.
Wade last year had a very good game against Michigan. So if you want to try to attack him, I guess go ahead. Now, they do have good receivers to put against him in the slot, but some of those wide screens, those aren't always, sometimes Shea Patterson throws them backwards, and Shaun Wade has the ability to cut through blockers and blow stuff up. So be careful about that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to go for any of those cornerbacks, I guess my advice would just be, you know, I would say good luck. Yeah. They're all very, very good. Is that it, Tom?
I think that's it.
So that is the Michigan Fan Concern Podcast of the Year 2019. Next year, I have a feeling there might be even a few more concerns from Michigan fans. Just my thought.
First year head coach Greg Schiano coming back to Columbus.
That's what I'm saying. It's a lot of storylines there, Tom. I can't wait.
Yep.
So thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network with the Buckeye Sloopcast on Mondays and Fridays, the Silver Bullets podcast on Tuesday, and us Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays, Saturdays, whenever. Mondays. Forgot Mondays.
Yeah.
And also, if you want the Patreon version of the show where we give you, we promise a bonus podcast a month, but we're kind of averaging around 2 a week at this point.
Yeah, November has been a good month for our patrons.
Yes, so that's at patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly, where you can also get the ad-free version of every podcast. And so we will see you, we'll talk to you guys soon.